This next build I'll be showing you guys is called the Omen of Death. And the reason why it's called that is because when you see this build coming at you, you're not really going to escape. So it's a blood magic soul reaping reaper with Marauder Speed runes. Speed runes is really important for the build because Necromancers in general don't have many evade frames or escapes, so movement is their one mechanic that helps them survive, but it also really helps them to chase down targets because a lot of ways that people outplay Necromancers is just out-rotate them. So Rune of Speed is actually pretty insane on Necromancers, and I honestly think that it should be nerfed from like permanent, because like you can get permanent swiftness, to having like permanent, the effect of having like almost super speed, to giving it like a on swiftness application effect, so it's not constant, and then have like an ICD of like 10 seconds. But yeah, just in general, speed runes is overpowered, and you'll see later there's a lot of synergy with it in my build. Marauder Amulet, so this is a high damage crit build, so you want to go with an amulet that has ferocity in it. You can go berserker, but that's a little bit too squishy for me. The reason why I take Marauder over Demolisher is because toughness doesn't really give you that much value. So when you're in Shroud, you actually have a 50% damage reduction, which means that toughness doesn't really give you that much value. So actually vitality gives you a lot of value as a necro, because the higher your vitality is, the higher your shroud is, right? So if I take off my amulet here and I go like berserker, my maximum shroud goes to like 17,000. So yeah, there is a huge difference in having a vitality amulet, and you just get a lot more value from vitality than from having toughness as a necro. You do also get a lot of toughness from like protection and stuff like that, from like if you're getting supported from your allies, so that can be really good as well to stack on top of that. But yeah, generally for yourself, you want to have Marauders because it plays around most of the things, right? Like if you're fighting a power build, vitality is still pretty good for you, and if you're playing against a Condi build, well then you get destroyed if you have Demolishers. So yeah, it's pretty much that. So I'm using Greatsword and Axe Warhorn. You want to use Opportunity and Exposure always on Axe Warhorn because you do a lot of cripples with your axe, and just in general Necromancers do tons of cripples, so you get the damage modifier from this almost always, so it gives you tons of damage. And then Exposure gives you a 5 stack of vulnerability whenever you swap to this weapon, and that's really good with axe because oftentimes you'll be using your axe 2 immediately, and axe 2 is a huge nuke that has bonus damage per vulnerability stack. So basically your vuln is doubled, so instead of getting 5% extra damage on your axe 2, you get 10%, and Sigil of Exposure is just really good for that. So yeah, that's what I take on that. I take Escape and Energy on Greatsword because generally this is actually your kiting weapon in a way. So you'll like swap to a Greatsword and then you'll use your Nightfall on yourself, and you want to be able to escape in a lot of situations. So Escape is the best sigil for escaping. And Energy is just really good on Necros as well because, as I said before, they don't have many dodges. So each little bit of dodge you get from the Energy sigil means a lot more than like on a class where you've got tons of dodges. So I like that. Let's go over the traits. So Blood Magic is really busted right now. The Ritual of Life is actually, it requires a nerf. It gives you a revive percentage of 4% per tick. Compared to a lot of other res things, that's way too high. So yeah, this is the best. You should take this right now. If this gets nerfed, you probably would still take it, but you could potentially take, I mean, you're not really doing any bleeds, right? So yeah, you you would just still take Ritual of Life. Or maybe you'd swap to Spite. But Spite right now is really weak. So I would stay Blood. Blood gives you a lot of sustain and damage for your teams. It's just invaluable right now. It's probably the best. So yeah, Blood just gives you a ton of sustain with regen on your dodge. It gives you lifesteal whenever you hit things. It gives you an aura, which you give to your allies, which gives lifesteal as well. So you're getting like double the lifesteal. And then your allies have this kind of like effect where they don't degenerate health when they're in down state. So it just makes rezzing so easy with these two traits. And then you take Unholy Martyr. So Unholy Martyr has a really good synergy with this trait as well, but we'll talk about that later. And whenever you enter Shroud, you take conditions from allies near you, and then when you leave Shroud, you consume those conditions and gain life force off of them. So it makes you get a lot of condition cleanse with this build, and the timing of it is also really good, because when you leave Shroud, oftentimes people have just put a lot of stuff on you to try to get you out of Shroud, and you usually want to be tanking a lot of things when you go into Shroud. And then as soon as you leave Shroud, people are going to probably jump on you again, right? Because they know that you're vulnerable. So at this time, you're usually going to be kiting pretty hard. So you want to be able to cleanse the condies to allow you to kite better. And yeah, this is just a really good trait. You wouldn't really go for like a well build, even though that would make you super tanky with protection, because it just makes you too susceptible to condies then. In Soul Reaping, I take Speed of Shadows. Now this is a little bit controversial, but Soul Marks is actually not that good anymore because you have a lot of ways to gain Shroud. So the life force on staff attacks is really not that good. The unblockable on your staff is really good though. And if you were taking staff, you could consider taking this, but I'm not taking staff with this build, so there's no purpose to take it. And Speed of Shadows is just an insane trait. It gives you swiftness whenever you go into Shroud, and it removes all movement inhibiting conditions when you enter Shroud as well. So whenever you enter Shroud, it basically allows you to do a lot of kiting maneuvers. So you remove all of those condies, right? So if you get immobed, you just go in Shroud and then use your 2 skill, and then you just get out of there, right? And so you're removing the inhibiting conditions when you enter Shroud, and then you're removing 3 more conditions when you leave Shroud. So oftentimes you can remove a lot of conditions over time just by going in and out of Shroud. So it helps you sustain quite a bit because you're not cleansing all these cover condies with your Unholy Martyr, because you're cleansing them with Speed of Shadows. So yeah, it's just really good. And you're using Speed Rune. So this helps you to keep up your swiftness uptime. So even though you have a lot of swiftness uptime with your build, with Spectral Walk and Warhorn 5, that's it. That's enough for perma super swiftness. But when you're getting focused as a Necro, you're often going to get corrupted or boons ripped from you. 100% of if a Thief is on you, a Rev is on you, or a Necro is on you, which is going to be very often, you're going to lose boons. And Necros don't really have that many boons to cover, so they're going to lose swiftness pretty much. So just to be able to reapply your swiftness very often is super important, especially in the case of you being focused, right? So if you're being focused, you need swiftness. That's the time when you need swiftness to get out of there. So yeah, I don't think you're going to have time to like reapply your Locust Form if you're getting kited. You're going to need to kite and you're getting focused. So going in Shroud is what you're already kind of doing. So it just gives you the swiftness and allows you to keep doing what you're doing normally. So it's kind of like a high tempo play, whereas if I have to recast my Locust Swarm while I've got people on me, I could get interrupted and all that. It's not very convenient. So Speed of Shadows is actually really insane, not because of what it does, but when you need it to do something, it really does that one thing. So next, you have Soul Barbs. Entering or exiting Shroud increases your damage for a duration. This is kind of like a PvE trait, but I'm not taking that many fears in this build since I don't have staff and I don't have the the fear ring, so this doesn't really give me that much value. And Vital Persistence is more of like a tanky option, and I'm going for like a high DPS build. So Soul Barbs is just really nice because you're entering in and out of Shroud very often. So yeah, you just always have that 10% extra damage. This gives you just more Shroud, which is nice. Death Perception. So this is a really good trait. It gives you 300 ferocity and 33% increased crit chance in Shroud. So I have, how much crit chance? I have 52% crit chance. I don't really gain Fury. So while I'm in Shroud, I gain like 85% crit chance, which is really important because that's when I want to do my damage. And yeah, just the 300 ferocity is pretty insane. So like right now I'm at 183. I go in Shroud. Now I have another trait that gives me another 300 ferocity. So I'm getting 600 ferocity when I go in Shroud. So I go from 183 to 223. So that's 40% extra damage in Shroud. So each one of those traits gives me 20% more damage when I crit, obviously. So that's just really good. Eternal Life is a bit too tanky. So yeah, I like Death Perception because this is it's a burst build. Next you have Chilling Nova. Relentless Pursuit, you kind of don't need that because Speed of Shadows is just a better version of it. And this is a shout trait, so you just take this. It's a little bit extra chill. It works nice with this because your chills add extra damage to your target. So yeah, that's really good. Whenever you fear people, you'll chill, which is only really with like corrupts randomly on stability or your Shroud 3. But chill is always nice because obviously you want to give people chill because it's just one of the strongest conditions in the game. I take Soul Eater instead of Chilling Victory for the same reason that I don't really take Fear of Death, because I'm not really going for like a fear build, so my chill uptime isn't really there necessarily. So I'm not really proccing Chilling Victory off cooldown, and I don't really need the Life Force that much either because I have plenty of it. So yeah, Decimate Defenses just gives you crit chance. I don't really need that much crit chance anyways. So Soul Eater just gives you 10% extra damage in melee. So if you're noticing a trend here, I've got a lot of damage modifiers. 10% here. You've got, you know, the ferocity here, 10% extra when there's chill on my target, and then 10% when I'm in melee range. So yeah, I have a lot of modifiers, and this allows you to do insane damage with your Reaper Shroud. So yeah, that's pretty much the point of the build, is just using Reaper Shroud to do the most damage. And yeah, lastly we have Reaper's Onslaught. So this is another trait that kind of is needing a nerf in my opinion. It gives you permanent quickness almost in Shroud. So every 3 seconds you gain 3 seconds of quickness in Shroud. And this is really good for a lot of different things. So it also gives you recharge on all of your Shroud skills whenever you auto attack. So your auto attack chain is 3 hits. The final hit will give you the 1 second of recharge on all of your Shroud skills. So if I go over to this thing and I have a bunch of Shroud, let's say, and I go into Shroud and I use my skills like this and then I auto attack, you'll notice my skills are going down a little bit faster. So you often want to just spam 1 in Shroud very often and then wait for someone to do something and then go for like a big skill, or use, you know, a couple of your skills first so that you get some value off of the recharge reduction, and then go for, you know, the auto attack to recharge them. And also another thing is you gain 3 seconds of quickness, right? So it's not when you're in Shroud that you have quickness. You can also have the quickness when you leave Shroud. So this is really good for landing your heal skill. So your heal skill as a Necro, Consume Conditions, is really hard to land because it's such a slow, it's a 1 1/4 second cast time. That's one of the slowest skills in the game. So having quickness on this is really important. So what you'll do often is you'll go into Shroud and you know that people are going to try to interrupt your thing, so you'll like 2 away, and then you'll quickness cast your heal, and it's really fast, and they can't really react to it that easily. So it's often really difficult to interrupt your consume conditions, and that just increases your sustain so much. Not because you want to be using your heal that quickly, but because not getting your heal interrupted is insane, right? Because usually when a necro gets their heal interrupted, they're kind of dead, right? Like, yeah, you can get it interrupted and then just go in Shroud again and then leave, but then that would be kind of just using the quickness trick, right? So, I mean, it's just really good for your survivability and preventing you from having these hard punishing moments, right? So yeah, that's really good. Utilities. So I take Spectral Armor. Spectral Armor is really good because it gives you protection for 8 seconds. It's a stun break, and it gives you 8% life force whenever you're struck on like a 1 second ICD. So it's just one of the hardest like defensive traits that allows you to stay in like team fights and stuff like that as long as possible. And what you can do also is you can use Spectral Armor. Say like you're about to get like 3 people that jump on you. You can use Spectral Armor and then go into Shroud, and you are a tanky boy then, because you've got the protection, you've got the damage reduction from being in Shroud, which is like 50%, and then you're gaining Shroud because the Spectral Armor still works while you're in Shroud. You're gaining 8% life force as well while you're in Shroud. So you're oftentimes people won't even like be able to touch you, and that is sort of like a high tempo play, right? So a lot of people can often just not attack you, and then you're kind of wasting your time then, but then you can play aggressively then. So yeah, Spectral Armor into Shroud and then play very aggressively is almost along the lines of like a Revenant using their Glint heal to play aggressively. So yeah, it's really good. Spectral Walk is best in slot on all Necro builds. It gives you Condi Cleanse, it gives you Swiftness, it gives you a Stun Break, and it gives you a kind of like a juke ability with the, you use it and then you have a limited amount of time that you can reuse it and you port back. This is not a Shadow Step, it is an actual port, so you can use it on any kind of terrain, and there will never be like a no valid path issue. It will always take you back to that. So because of this, you can often outplay people very hard with your positioning. And yeah, this skill is just really good. Next we have Spectral Grasp. Spectral Grasp is insane because it gives you 15% life force per target that you hit. So right now I'm at 32%, and this will shoot out 5 at maximum, 5 like claws, and they have pretty decent tracking, and it will give you 15% per hit. So as you can see there, I hit 3 people. I've now got 82% Shroud. So this is a huge Shroud contributor, and it really just keeps you going. It's really good against Mesmers. So like even if you're like 1v1ing a Mesmer, even though it's a really bad matchup, this can actually help you to win it, because if they have all their clones out and you Spectral Grasp them, not only do you mess with their clones by interrupting them, but you give yourself a ton of Shroud. And yeah, it's also good versus Rangers. In team fights, it's just insane. So yeah, I love Spectral Grasp. It also gives out Chill, which helps you to stick to your target. So it's just a really good skill. Next, you have Chill to the Bone. Lich is really good right now, but it's a bit slow. This is like a burst Reaper build, so you kind of want higher tempo than that, and this just gives you stability and a stun, so it's just really strong. It's a 3-second stun, which is really long. That's like a Jade Winds on a Revenant. So yeah, it actually is a Jade Winds. This is literally a Jade Winds with a with an elite skill, and yeah, it's just gives you stability. So stability right now is very limited because it's been nerfed across the board. So this 2 stack of stability is quite strong. So yeah, and it gives you 2 stacks per target hit. So yeah, you can get quite a bit of stability. And it allows you to kind of like cleave in situations where there's a lot of counter pressure. So I like Chilled to the Bone a lot. Lich form is probably okay, but too squishy as well, because this is Marauder Amulet, not Paladins. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This can go through walls, and you can use it like to kite very well, so it's just more playability to it. It's a really good skill. Then we have Consume Conditions. Obviously, this is just the best heal for Necros because it clears every Condi in the game. Yeah, it's just really good. It gives you insane staying power. So, yeah. Next, we'll go over the Axe skills. So, yeah, I already talked about Axe. It just hits the target really hard. If you have Vallun on the target, it does even more damage. You want to basically use this off cooldown. So like you'll use your axe 2, and then you'll swap weapons, and then you'll use all the stuff here, and then as soon as you come back into the axe, you'll use axe 2, and then you'll use axe 2 before you leave, and swap back to another weapon. Like you want to use this off cooldown. So yeah, that's pretty much the best skill on this thing. Axe 3 is a single boon conversion. And it gives a cripple. It's not amazing, but you can use it while not facing the target, and it's quite wide range. So it's nice in team fights and just for crippling people to give you your, what is it? Your opportunity sigil, right? So it's nice to get that on there. So you'll do opportunity and then exposure, and then you'll do tons of damage with your axe 2. So yeah, that's really nice. Well of Doom, unblockable days. This kind of makes up for not having unblockable staff marks. So you still have at least one unblockable attack, which is really good in down fight situations because you daze all the people trying to res. And Locust Swarm, this is just a life force generator. You want to use this usually before you go in Shroud. So you do it, and then you go in Shroud, and then you've got the life force kind of like ticking on you and give you more sustain while you're in melee range. And then, yeah, that's pretty much how you use that skill. Or if you just need swiftness. Otherwise, yeah, you just want to use it to get in melee range with your Shroud. Your Greatsword skills. So the auto attack on the Greatsword is actually pretty good. It's very slow, but it gives chill on the final hit. So that's actually better than the next skill, which is Gravedigger, which, as you can see here, has a decent coefficient, but it's too slow. It's 1.25 second cast. So yeah, it's usually too slow, and there's like blinds and Aegis everywhere that often just, it's not worth it to use it a lot of times. Maybe if you land like a Spectral Grasp, and then it's good to like precast that into it because there's travel time while you're waiting for the Gravedigger to cast. But otherwise, it's not really that good. Death Spiral, on the other hand, is very good because it hits 6 times, and they add up to more damage than Gravedigger. Also, they give life force per hit, and up to 12 Vuln. So it's just way better than Gravedigger in almost every aspect. So this is kind of like your heavy hitter skill. You want to be using this all the time on Greatsword, and landing that, it gives you sustain, it gives you damage, it gives you your team damage. So yeah, it's just the best skill here. This can kind of be used when this is on cooldown, but as I said, like, you'd probably want to use auto attacks instead. In the situation where you've got nothing else, yeah, use Gravedigger. Next is Nightfall. This skill is insane. It drops down a well that increases in size, and it blinds and cripples, and it converts one boon to a condition every pulse. So it's just really good in team fights to throw that on the middle of a node, or if you're getting pressured, you throw that down, and the people who are attacking you will get crippled and blind and corrupted. It's just a really good peeling skill and really good team fighting skill. So yeah, just throw that in the middle of like a choke point, and it gets you a lot of value. Next is Grasping Darkness. This skill is a little bit weird with how it works. but essentially it's 3 claws that come out, and they will pull the target to you and chill them. It'll give you life force. And yeah, it has really bad aim. Like, if the target is moving, it's really hard to land it. So often what I do with the skill is I will detarget, because like if this target moves even slightly at this range, it'll miss. And it always goes at its maximum range. So if I'm standing here, it'll pull out and then come all the way in and then pull them in. So it's really easy to avoid unless they're really far out. But if they're really far out, then they can easily sidestep it. So what I do is I kind of like lead on where they're going to go by detargeting. So when you detarget, you can just aim it wherever you want, and then you can kind of put it in an area that's good, whereas like say I'm targeting this right here and our positioning is like this. If I use it here, well, the claws are going to be like out here, and it's just going to be weird. Another thing is Grasping Darkness can actually go up and down terrain, so you can often pull people off ledges. It's just really good for like a gap closer, right? And you can do things where like you use it from like looking behind. That actually went on full cooldown there. That was really weird. But yeah, if you use it when it's pulling back, you don't need to, like, it's kind of like set and forget, so you don't need to do anything after that point. It's just gonna pull it in, and then you can start pre-casting something else. So yeah, it's just a really good skill. What I was gonna show you is like kiting. You could do that and then like pull them all the way back. Next is the Shroud Skills. So in Shroud, obviously your auto attack, the 3rd chain would give you the damage reduction. You have perma, quickness, and Shroud. The 2 skill is really good because it's a leap. You use this for mobility, and it's a 5-second cooldown. It also blinds on the final hit, so that's really good for preventing like a lot of counter pressure from people. And it hits many times, right? So it's kind of like immune to blinds and Aegis. And then the 3 skill is, it's kind of like a stability attack. So like you give yourself stability, and there's this buff on you called like something terror. While you're in Shroud and you have that, you will have a 20% damage reduction. So you saw all those damage reductions that I was talking about before with you have like 50% in Shroud, you have the Spectral Armor, and then you'd have the protection from Spectral Armor. When you use 3, you have another damage reduction on your Shroud. So you are really tanky in Shroud. Now obviously Reaper Shroud degenerates life 5% every second, whereas Core degenerates 3. So it kind of makes up for that. But you do have a lot of like survivability in surviving focus, right? And obviously if you use it again, it will do a fear. But when you use the fear, you lose the damage reduction. So what you want to do is you want to kind of wait till the buff is about to end on the 3 skill, and then use the fear near the end. So you mainly want to use it just for the stability, and then if you can, I mean, if you fear them, you generally don't need the damage reduction anyways. But like, yeah, it's just something to think about. The 4 skill is a heavy hitting poison whirl. This is really insane in team fights because it attacks so fast and it gives out poison. It's really good in like cleave situations. So you put poison on the down body, and it is also like kind of, you're moving while doing damage, right? So say for example, I'm being chased by someone right now. I can kite while also using the death spiral. So like this, like, kiting, and then I move in this direction and stuff like that. And then the 5 skill is Executioner's Scythe. This is just a really nice stun. You just want to auto attack them while they're stunned, and it just gives you chill. It doesn't really do that much damage anymore, but yeah, that's pretty much the build. The playstyle is pretty much, you want to start in Greatsword. You want to just throw out your 5 and 4 into like a fight, and then you want to do your 3 if you land the pull. Then what you do is you'd swap to your Warhorn and Axe, and if they've got like boons on them, then you'd Unholy Feast, and then you'd immediately Ghastly Claws. You'd auto attack some. By now you probably want to like Whale of Doom and then Locust Swarm, and then go into Shroud, go in and do your damage. Put the 3 on, whirl, and then auto attack a bunch. Maybe fear them into your thing, and then once they're stunned, you can leave, use your Axe 2 while they're stunned, and then swap to your Greatsword, use Greatsword 3, use your big heavy hitters, and then yeah, pretty much you want to just use Grasping Darkness and Spectral Grasp to kind of like gap close. You have a lot of CCs in this build, and you can lock people down and just do tons of Shroud auto damage to them while they're CC'd. And yeah, you have a lot of crit chance, so it hits pretty hard for a really fast hitting attack. So yeah, that's pretty much the build. By the way, you can run staff on this build. I just didn't show that off in this video. However, there is another video that I will link in the description, which is a montage of me using staff with a build that's basically the same as this. So check that out as well if you'd prefer running staff instead of greatsword. And if you like the video, like it. Also subscribe if you want more. And leave a comment down below if you're a professional necromancer who doesn't need any help with social distancing.